Hey, and welcome to the third episode of the L. Code Hour. This, in case you've missed it, is the show where I live code an Android and an iOS application using Xamarin in real time. That means that it's unlike a demo. We get to see all the bumps in the road and everything's not going to work quite perfectly. And so the fun part will be when the mistakes happen and you get to see what real-world application in Xamarin looks like. So that intro video that you just saw is new. I've been refining that as I go along, and the audio didn't work, which is unfortunate, but it was all written in Xamarin.iOS, and that is up available on my GitHub page at lpritchar/code-hour. So in episode number 1, just a quick recap, in episode number 1, I explained what Xamarin is and what the objective of this episode, what this show is, and then built out a Hello World application in iOS and in Android. In the second show, we finished up with having an Android application where the basic UI for a calculator had been complete. Now I think it's about time to go back to the iOS world, finish up the UI, and then get into where things actually get interesting, where we have code that's shared between both the iOS and the Android application, because that's where the real power of a cross-platform solution like Xamarin comes in. Because otherwise you're just building two complete applications from scratch, and you have twice the amount of effort. And our objective here is to build an application where the effort and the cost of building an application should be only 120, 130% of building a single application alone. So let's get started. There's lots to accomplish. This is where we left things off. This is Visual Studio. And over in the iOS application, we had a main view controller, as you may recall, and we were doing a little bit of work, not very much so far, where we just created a main label that had a title of 0. And if we run this now on an iPhone 6, we should see this pop up over here. This is exactly where we left things. And what I'm a little bit worried about here is that when I ran this about 1 minute before show, just to make sure everything was still working, it crashed. So what we're about to see here is we may see, for some reason, things were working at the end of episode 1, and they are not working now at the beginning of episode 3, even though nothing's changed. So this is going to be a little bit of an interesting situation right off the bat. So the error message that we're seeing here is, could not find a storyboard named main in the bundle NS bundle. And I believe this error is something which is because in the info plist, I'm just going off of pretty much nothing at this point, gut feeling. I think the info plist lists that we want to start up the main storyboard, and it's going to be, if it's not going to be here, devices, main interface, launch screen, we may need to go into the code behind, because this is not a very good view. It's pretty, but we want to actually see the XML which is behind this. Now, if you've ever looked into an info plist before, this is going to be an interesting experience. If you've never looked into an info plist before, this is going to be an interesting experience because this format is not very XML-y. It's a combination of key values and then something else, which is a data type, in this case a string. Oh, my zoom level's off. We should go up to 225. There we go. Is that a little better? Hopefully. It's a dictionary which is a combination of key, and so you'll see every other line is key, and then data type, and then the value goes inside of there. It's a little bit weird, especially when you see things like array, but that's just the way it is. Now I think if I search in here for main, I'm going to see a main storyboard file, and I think this will be interesting. I think we can just delete that. Did we get that right? I 4 lines, key, string, and we don't need to worry about the iPad. So, all right, I've deleted that. I'm going to hit F5, and hopefully the lie that was episode 1 will be solved here in episode 3. Yeah, as you may recall, in episode 1, I actually encouraged strongly against the use of a storyboard file because storyboard files are notoriously bad at merge conflicts. Ooh, that worked. Whew. When you have multiple developers working on a storyboard file, and these storyboard files end up getting gigantic if you're not careful. Now you can break them down, and you can also use zib files, which is just an individual screen, and you can hook things up that way. But I still have just found that things work so much better when you've got, especially got multiple developers, when you have people working all in code. It also ends up working an awful lot better when you want to be able to share user interface elements between iOS and Android. So I would encourage this approach that I'm showing you here and that I started in episode 1. Okay, so that is not very pretty, but we at least are ready to start building out some buttons. So let's do that. I'm gonna switch over to the main view controller here, and this background color is absolutely unacceptable. Actually, maybe what we want is we're kind of roughly aiming for this calculator here, and so what we could do is pull off an RGB value from this. And one thing that's really nice in Mac world that we don't have in PC world that I'm aware of is an easy way of just pulling off RGB values off of individual elements. And so this is going to be, unfortunately, it's going to involve me doing a screen capture to pull this out. And I don't know if any PC users here are big fans of Paint.net, but I love this piece of software. It's free, open source. I've actually contributed to it financially because it's a wonderful piece of software. And we are going to, I just hit K, which is the color picker, and we can see that 236, 236, 236 is probably a good color. So the iOS land has a kind of strange UI where if you were writing things in Objective-C, which is the older but default language for doing iOS development, you would normally do things like iOS color dot, and then there's a bunch of static, what in C# world is static properties off of there, and so you can do UI color dot from RGB, and that's a fairly typical API approach in iOS world. And so just to get used to it, what you do not usually see as much is new UI color, where you could specify your RGB values. Well, I lied. There they are, your red, green, and blue values. That's a nicety that Xamarin has incorporated in when they wrote the mappings. So that would not normally be something you would see in the Objective-C world, but they gave that to us. By the way, if you're maybe a little small on the screen here, but the IntelliSense here says nFloat. So instead of a regular float data type that we have in C#, all of the native types in iOS are nFloats, nint, nint, and those are to solve the problem of iOS being 64-bit and .NET not always being 64-bit. Sometimes an int can be 32-bit, sometimes it can be 64-bit, depending on the situation in which it's encountered, but a nint is a native int for iOS. Anyway, long story short, we're trying to get to 236, 236, 236, and I think, oh, here's another weird thing. These are floats, and so what it actually wants, and this is a weird thing about colors in iOS, is it does not want a scaled value from 0 to 255 like every other system everywhere does. Instead, it wants a a float between 0 and 1. So what you can do is you can take 236 divided by 255 to get the color that we want. A little bit weird, but that is iOS for you. And our alpha is 1. We want it to be solid. Now, should I go in and try and do two things at once, or just run it? I'm going to hit Control F5, which is going to run a little bit faster. Control F5, debug, that is, here it is, start without debugging. Control F5, it's going to launch a little bit faster. It's going to launch a little bit faster for us, and it's going to have the benefit that once it's finished loading, I can keep this up and running and still be able to type code. Something went wrong. That was black, and it really ought to have been gray. And float alpha. Transparency from 0 to 1. I'm almost positive that that should be 1. But maybe I'm getting my transparency backwards. We'll just have to go check this out real quick and see how this turns out. In the meantime, while we're waiting for this deploy, should I tell you a joke? You know there are 10 different types of developers in the world, those that know binary and those that don't. True story. Okay, I am not going to worry about that right now because black is good enough. UI color, I can't give up on it. UI color got from RGBA, and this will actually take bytes, so this is going to be a little bit nicer. That's another nice Xamarism. Xamarin did that for us, even though iOS would not normally have. And alpha byte, or a byte of 255. One more time. We're going to run that. We'll have to subject you to another joke. No, I won't do that. This is gonna work. It's gonna run fast. It's gonna be fantastic. So the next thing we're gonna get into, as soon as we get the background color, is throwing up some buttons. And as you may recall, we're trying to get our buttons to look like, hey, it worked. Woo. We're trying to get our buttons to look like this. So maybe we'll do the plus minus, the 0, the dot, and the equals, and we'll do that first. Yeah. Okay, that would do it. Okay, so let's add some views. Again, like I mentioned in the first episode, I'm a big fan of grouping your code in the... Oh, we've actually already made a mistake. And that is, we were doing a lot of work in the constructor, and I would encourage you not to do work in the constructor in iOS. The correct place to instantiate views is in a method called viewDidAppear. Ooh. ViewDidAppear is the correct place to do a lot of your work. That's before, if you take a look at the lifecycle events for iOS, that happens, wait, I'm sorry, I lied to you again. ViewDidAppear is an okay place to do it. ViewDidAppear is right after it has appeared for the very first time. And if a given view controller appears and then something else appears in front of it, view will disappear what happened. But and then if that thing in front of it disappears, then view will fire again. So that would actually not be a great place to instantiate views. The correct place to instantiate views is going to be in another method called viewDidLoad. There we go, viewDidLoad. So that's the perfect place to do your setup logic. Add your constraints, add your views. So we are going to add, it looks like we've already added a button here. And in this button, we didn't do much, but we probably should have set a text property. So let's do this. Oh, this is another weird element of iOS development. In most other languages, you set the text property, but in iOS, it's set text, set text, UI button dot label value, button type, right, title. Title? No, it's not title. Set title. There we go. Set title. Should be text. Okay, so let's have this be a parameter. So title, and then here's a weird thing. It's a little bit weird, and that is you need to specify which state you want to set the title for. We want to set the title for the normal state, but you can change the image or the title in these set properties so that this is only a color that happens on focused, or it's only a color that happens on disabled. We just want this to be here, and I'm going to extract this into a parameter that was control R. We're going to create a parameter in the containing method called title. There we go. And when we called add button, we wanted this to be, we want to do this button down here, plus equals. So plus equals. And main button is a bad name for this. Let's call this plus equals button. Why not? And let's go crazy. We're gonna get this all to work. It's gonna be beautiful. We're gonna do the 0, the dot, and the 0, the dot, and the equals. All right, 0 dot equals. I'm gonna control RF, extract that into a field, and we're gonna call that. We're gonna call that the button 0. No, not just 0 button. All right, and now we're going to constrain some views. Now, this is really cool. I'm going to code it up first. I'm going to code this up first. But what is neat about this is that we can use the multiply operator to say that we want, because this button, if we, one approach is we could say we want this to be 200 pixels and this to be 200 pixels, but what we really want is that to be a percentage of the screen, and that is something which we're able to do using constraints in iOS by having a multiplier. And the multiplier, in this case, since it's 25% of the screen, we want it to be, the multiplier to be 0.25. So the widths of all of these will be 0.25, and the heights of all of these will be, let's skip this top row here, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever 1/5 is. So we've got our main label and the plus minus, what do I call that? Yeah, plus equals. Plus minus. Okay. Plus minus. Much better. Okay. So we're gonna have the plus minus dot frame dot. Well, we're gonna align it to bottom. So to do that, we say bottom is equal to the view dot frame dot bottom. and we want the left to be equal to view.frame.left, and we want the width, as we were talking about, to be the view.frame.width times 0.25f, and the height to be the view.frame.height times, oh hey, I've got a calculator up here. Is it 1 divided by 5? 0.2. Don't laugh at me. My math skills aren't so strong. Okay, and so now we want to do the same thing with the plus and minus button with the 0 button. So, oops, let's just say view all 0 button, 0 frame bottom is equal to view frame bottom. That's fine. The left is equal to the plus minus button dot frame dot right because we've got it's going to be backwards, but let's see if I can do this backwards for you. So if we have the calculator here and we just set the lower right, actually maybe I'll show you this on the screen, it'd be easier. We just set this, so we're trying to say the 0 button's left edge, the left edge of the 0 button is equal to the plus minus button's right edge. So there, we've just aligned that to the right of the plus minus button. This might be a little bit weird to get used to, but it is really powerful. It is a wonderful system, and I'll show you the alternative again just to remind you in just a little bit. But the alternative to doing this in a zib-nib or a storyboard seems nice during a demo, but it is awful to maintain. This is so much easier to scan through it, and it may look a little complicated, but it is so much easier to understand what's going on. You just have to kind of maybe trust me on this, because it may not look like it at first. Okay, so the width. Now, here's one problem. Here's one problem that I have with this. And I see this code a lot, and that is we've now repeated our 0.25. Let's say we wanted to add another column. Now we have to change all of these 0.25. So I think this is a lot cleaner if we could extract this out into a variable, but I think it's a lot cleaner if we just say, I want the width, this guy's width, to be equal to the plus minus button frame dot width. And now the plus minus button becomes the foundation for all of the other buttons. And we can do the same thing with its height. So we want to say plus minus button dot frame dot height. And now if I need to change, if we need to change this and we decide to add this additional row up here, we're changing this 0.1 to whatever 1 divided by 6 is. Okay, so we're getting there. We got 2 more buttons to go. The 0 button finished up. We need the dot button. So the dot button frames bottom is equal to the view frame dot bottom. I suppose an alternative would be, instead I could say the dot button, this guy's frame dot bottom, is equal to the plus minus button's frame dot bottom, and that would also be a lot more dry. Don't repeat yourself, right? But this is fine now. So dot button frames left is equal to the 0 button frames right. The width and the height should be correct, and then we just need to add one more set of constraints here, and that is for the equals button. And so the equals button frame dot bottom is equal to the view dot frame dot bottom. The left is equal to the dot. Whoa! Dot button. There we go. Whew. Okay. Dot button frame right, and the width, height are all correct. And what do you think? Is this going to work? I'm going to hit F5 because I don't have a great deal of faith that this is actually going to work out. What is that? I don't know. This is where we're trying to see. Gosh, and that blue really bothers me. Gosh, it looks awful. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it within the hour, and we're gonna get into actually sharing code, because that's really important. You can't spend this whole hour just doing UI work. Believe it or not, there are buttons down here. You can barely see it, plus, minus, 0, dot, and equals. And I think the problem may be that these buttons have a background color that's bad. Okay, so we need to get add button. Conveniently enough, we put all of this into a single static variable method for just adding buttons. It's we only have to change this one place. It's really easy to get into a state where you're just sort of like copying and pasting this code over again and again and again. Don't do it. Don't do it. Trust me, this makes life so much easier. So we're going to set the background color for the button dot background color is equal to UI color dot from RGBA, and we want those values to be, well, in this case, let's just stick with this one. Oh, but the text color is what the actual problem was. What is it? Foreground color? Set title color. There we go. Title color, and I want the title color to be black. Yeah, UI color black. That looks. Or state. Remember, got to do which state. We want this to be the normal state. And go. Oops, wrong one. Okay. Starting it up. All right. It's good. It's good, but we need some margins. We need some margins in there. It's not perfect yet. What do you think the margins are here? Like 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just try with 4. 4 pixels. So believe it or not, you can actually do addition and subtraction when you're in here. So in this case, I want my width to be equal to the view frame width times 0.25 minus 4, and the height to be 0.2f minus 4, and this might just work. No, it's not going to work. We need the width to be minus, we need to subtract out the margins, all of the individual margins. So, right, so in this case, we need to subtract out, let's even be nice about the left margin. We need to subtract out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versions of 4 pixels, so that's 5 times 4 is minus 20, right? And then here, the left is equal to the right plus 4, and the left is equal to the right plus 4, and the left is equal to the right plus 4, and then we should, oh, I don't have invisible anymore. I think that's going to work. You might have over-constrained the view. It'd be interesting. One thing that iOS does is if you specify the constraints, you can watch here as it complains that you have given it too many instructions. That's an improvement. So it's always a good idea just to watch your output window, and in your output window, sometimes it'll warn you that you have specified multiple constraints that can conflict with each other. So that's a helpful little hint there when you're doing UI work. Now, I never specified the last one I specified, it's left. It's width. And the width. Why is that happening? The margins all look good there. I must have messed up that width minus 20. I'm going to again without the minus 20. Another thing that you can do when you're doing the constraints is you can say, I want my width to be the same as... No, that wouldn't help us. It wouldn't help us to say we want all the widths to be equal to each other. I think we want this width now to be just minus 4. Yes, we just want the width to be minus 4 because all of the others are going to subtract all of the other minus 4s. That's right. This is what we want because when we said this width is equal to the other width, it's already taking this minus 4 into account. So this should work for us. Okay, I feel so good about that. I'm just going to move on to the next row of buttons. So we need... Okay, this would be easier if we just do add button, add button, add button. So do this fast, we knock this out. We have a 1, 2, 3, a plus. So 1, 2, 3, and a plus. Okay, and 1, button 2, button 3, and button plus. There we go. And 1, 2, 3 plus. Let's see if we can include one of those. What do we want to do first? We're going to do this button up here. Let's do 1. So button, button, UTT, button. Come on now. Button 1. Dot. Tell them a little bit dependent on the IntelliSense. Button 1 dot frame. Dot. We want to align the bottom to be equal to the plus minus button dot frame dot top, right? So now we're aligning the bottom of button 1 to the top. So we're setting it on top, right? And I guess while we're at it, we should do plus 4. Symbol. What's a component of? Oh, sneaky little bug. Single equals, this is not an assignment operator, we want an equality operator. And that confused me so much in computer science class when they first tried to explain what the difference between a double equals was and a single equals. I was like, what are you talking about? Okay, so we've got the bottom equal to the top. We've got to do the left equal to the view dot frame dot left. So that's got a left align that button 1. Now we've got to set its width. Its width is the same as the plus minus button And the same thing for the height. So you go plus minus button dot frame dot height. That's good, but it's not great. We still need to. Oh, I already did -4 up there. Okay, good. Okay, button 1. Is this enough? Is this enough? No, it's not enough. We need more code. We need to do the same thing with button 2. So we're going to say button 2 dot frame dot bottom equals button 1 dot frame dot bottom. By the way, feel free to ask any questions. I'm assuming there are people live watching this because that is the point. And so it looks like there's one person watching. I hope you feel free to chime in if I've got anything complicated going on here. Okay, so button 2 dot frame dot bottom equals button 1 dot frame dot. See, I start talking there where I mess things up. That doesn't seem right. Yeah, no, that's right. We're saying we want this guy's bottom to be equal to this guy's bottom. That sounds good. Button 2 frame left is equal to button 1 dot frame dot right. The width is equal to width. That looks good. And now we get to do the same thing for button 3 is equal to button. That's fine. Button 2. So button 3 frames left is equal to button 2 frames right. The width, the height, everything in the width and the height are pointing back to plus minus button, which is kind of tidy. And then the last button we do for this row is going to be the plus, so button plus dot frame dot bottom equals, that's fine. The left is equal to button 3 frames right. Feeling pretty good about this. All right, so I just had a 5, which means I'm not feeling really good about it. There's a little, I don't know, there's a little game I play about how confident I feel about it. If I hit F5, I'm going to see a debug error message. Hitting F5 is going to show me a debug error message in a way that Control F5 doesn't. So Control F5 is start without debugging it, and that's really handy when you just want to, you're just making little UI tweaks. You can change Control F5 because it's going to get there faster. You're going to see those UI changes as quickly as you possibly can. Whereas if you're doing run with debugging, which I just did, it takes an extra couple seconds to load it. Okay, we're close here. Looking pretty good. Now the 1, 2, 3, and plus they're missing a height, so it ought to be as simple as the bottom is the plus minus button dot frame dot top plus 4. Why did that not work? That is surprising. Well, we can try plus 8 and see what happens. Plus 8. Now, one thing I did mix up is the left of this guy is equal to plus 4. Now, if you're looking at this and you're saying, gosh, Lee, you are not dry at all. You're repeating this number 4 all over the place. You're right, but we can clean that up. We can clean that up pretty easily. We'll do something like this. Control RP to extract that into a variable, and you'll see resharper is just going to pop up right there. Hey, you want to replace all 8 instances of the number 4. We'll do that. We'll do that in just a little bit. But now this is good enough. So that is going to fix the problem of all of the buttons in the second row not pushing over right and having space in between them. And that top plus 8, I'm not feeling so good about that, but I don't know, that's weird. Plus minus button frame dot top plus 8 should have, we said the height of that guy was 2 minus 4. All right, moment of truth. Well, good. That's good, but it's not great. Why did those? Wait a minute. Button 1 frame dot bottom is equal to the plus minus button top plus 8. I don't know why that's. Let's come back to it. Should we try and debug this now? Anyone live there have any opinions? Should we debug this or just keep going? We've got 20 minutes and I'm really hoping to get to some actual cross-platform coding. So maybe let's not worry about it right now. I'll come back to it later. Let's get a little bit of the drudgery work out. We're half done. And we've got, let's take a look at this again. Where's the calculator? I closed it. Calculator here, we're going to do 1, 2, and so we got 3 more rows. We're not quite half done. But it should go much faster. So yeah, it's good. So now we need to actually go back here and duplicate those. So now we're going to have a 1, 2, 3, we're going to have a 4, 5, 6, and a 4, 5, 6, and then 4, 5, 6, and minus, button, minus. If you're thinking this was a lot easier in Android world, you are correct. You're correct. It was less work in Android world. That is not always the case. This should have been 4. I'm going to leave it where it should have been, and we'll worry about that. Maybe I'll dig into that after the show and release it, put it in the show notes rather than bore everybody. Okay, so we want button 1. Button 4 is going to be similar to button 1, right? So in this case, button 4 frame bottom equals button 1 dot frame dot top plus 4. The left is a view. And what the width is going to be the width, and the height is going to be the height. That'll look good. And then we've got button 5, which is going to be similar to button 5 has a frame dot bottom equals button 4 frames top bottom. We're going to align their bottoms. Kind of building it up this way. We could have done it down, but I don't know. This is just the way I did it. And so the button 5 frames to the left is equal to button 4 frames right as 4. Then we've got button 6 is nearly identical. Button 6 button 6 frame dot bottom left is equal to button 5, and we just need this button minus and button minus. Oops. Use that fancy. That's an Alt. I hold down the Alt key and drag there to get that. That's not just Visual Studioism. That's in Visual Studio Code and Sublime Text and a bunch of others. So let's see, button minus frame dot bottom. Yep, that's right. This should be button 4, and we should be ready to go. But I'm feeling so good. Let's just keep going. We are going to implement buttons 7. I will stop after this because I'm sure it'll mess something up. 7, 8, and 9, and let's not make the same mistake I made last time. 7, 8, 9, and times. 7, 8, and 9. We're going to create a field. I did Control minus to get back. Alt Enter, create field. Control minus, Alt Enter, create field. Control minus, which is the same as hitting the back button. It's the same as it's a shortcut key for that. Control minus, and button times. Boom. We now have 7, 8, 9, and times, and so we need to, no, I almost feel it. No, let's just keep going. We have a pattern that's working. So right, 7 is at buttons 4s, top is 4, the left is from left. Wait, that looks, oh no, yeah, that looks good. And we can do the same thing for 8, button 8, so close. Bear with me, folks. It may seem a little drudgery, but hopefully there's something in it. Button 8 is going to be button 7 frames bottom. This is going to come out really weird the next time you run this. You wait and see. It's going to be real interesting. 9. So minus with the insert. You guys have that problem as soon as you do the insert button, and everything goes terribly south from there. This is button 8 frame bottom is equal to button 8 frame right. Ooh, I think we actually just messed this up. Button 8's left is equal to button 7's right. So button 7 frame right. And there's some times to do, and you don't want this in a seed for this. Actually, this all works. It's going to be perfect. You aren't going to believe it. Times. And so times is bottom is equal to 8. Times bottom is equal to, we actually want this to be, I think 7 would be a little tighter. 7. 8's 7. That's interesting that I screwed that up. Okay, so 8's, and then 8's left is equal to 7's right, and 9's left is equal to 8's right, and times left is equal to button 9's right. Whew. Okay, here we go. That's, and the front margins. So margin there, and yeah. I'm going to hit F5 because I'm not at all confident this is going to work. Alright, this is the moment of truth. We'll have one more row to go after this works, and then we can get into 12 minutes. I don't want to violate the code hour part of the next show, man, do we? We'll at least flesh out the UI. And next week's show is going to be really fun, man. Okay, we're close. Let's see. 1, 2, 3 plus 4. Something happened to button 5. Button 5, some astute person is telling me in the comments. Yeah, they're not. I'm on my own. You guys are abandoning me. Alright, button 5. Bottom is equal to button 4's. Button 5. Bottom is equal to button 5's. Bottom. Okay, button 5's left is equal to button 4's right. So we must have just messed up the minus. Yes, button minus here. This should have been 6's right. That's going to work. And I'm so confident I'm going to be able to guess what buttons. 9. And the last one is the last row of buttons is 9. So weird. This is the C, the backspace. Remember in Android we couldn't use the less than character because that's all XML based, so it's going to be in the sample world. And then this is going to be divided by. We're going to do a future show where we're going to get into graphics. What that is going to be fun. But that is not for today. Button C, E, button C, button backspace, and button buy. Field, please, minus, create field, thank you. 7 frame top plus 4. The left is equal to frame left, the width is equal to width. That all looks good. And so now we're going to go duplicate that for button C. Oh yeah, I love using keyboard shortcuts. If you guys ever see me do anything that's inefficient, I really hope you'll point it out because I'm a collector of keyboard shortcuts. And my always looking for ways to save keystrokes. Whenever possible. So actually the bottom of all of these guys, this next row is button C, that frame that bottom. And now just do the left alignment for each of these. So button C frame left is equal to button C frame right. You ever just, part of the problem is because I'm casting this, it's using up a bunch of CPU cycles, and Visual Studio is fighting me for those CPU cycles, and so I'm actually typing without being able to see the results of myself typing, which, I don't know, does anyone ever do BBSs back in the 80s and 90s? There used to be a mode, where sometimes the modem was so slow that you would switch to half duplex. Do you remember this? It was full duplex and half duplex, and sometimes the response with the full duplex, where it was actually sending the response back so you could validate that what you typed was actually what the server received, was so slow that it was like, everything just didn't feel right. And so I ended up having to switch back to half duplex, so it would just show you immediately what you typed, so you didn't have to deal with that immense mismatch. That's kind of what I'm doing now. I kind of wanted to switch to half duplex. Visual Studio, where's my half duplex going? Alright, so button backspace, button C dot frame dot right plus 4. Let us not forget our plus 4s. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that my machine is right on the verge of crashing. It doesn't normally do this, but the live streaming application that I use, the live streaming app that I use ends up pulling a lot of CPU cycles off of my machine. Okay, I'm not seeing anything happen. Visual Studio is frozen because typing is just so hard. We're going to run it. I don't even trust myself to hit F5, it's running so slow. It's not normally like this, I swear. I've actually got a halfway decent machine. It is about 3 years old, but it is capable of running Visual Studio and a streaming application at the same time. 16 gigs of memory ought to be enough, right? Speaking of rigs, the Mac that I'm connecting to is a MacBook Pro. It was the 15-inch from 2000. It was a 15-inch. Was it? Oh no, it was not 15-inch. It was the little small MacBook Pro, the smallest one, MacBook 11, MacBook Pro 11, I think. And it was from about 3 years ago. And it's a pretty good machine for doing this. You can get by with MacBook Air if you're looking to save some money. MacBook Air will here should have had a frame dot height equal to view dot frame dot height times 0.25 f. That's going to work. And man, I so want to show just a little bit of coding and responding to my text. So I'm going to sneak that in here. The place to do it is on a method that I told you about briefly earlier. The place to hook into events is in view did appear and view did disappear. It's really tempting to do this in view did load, but like I mentioned in Android, it's really important to unsubscribe from your events. It's not as big a deal in this case, but it's still really a habit to get into. Always unsubscribe whenever you subscribe, and your memory management issues will largely disappear. That is a big takeaway that I learned over a couple years of doing Xamarin development. And it comes with other places too. But okay, over at view did up here, override view did this up here. Let's just start with the equals button. So we call the button equals. Call it equals button. Equals. Yes. There we go. Equals. This is a weird thing. I think I mentioned this before. This is a kind of a weird thing in iOS. You would think it would be called click, or maybe tap. No such luck. The event name for touching, clicking, or tapping, or whatever it is in iOS is actually called touch up inside. Probably would be able to give an explanation of why that's the case, but Control Shift Alt to move methods around and resharpen, by the way. But it would be worth it. You wouldn't care. But when you touch the equals button, how about we set the display main label dot text. Really is called text, not like button where you have to small set text. Equals, gotta do